So, no silly intro today, sound issues aside, because this is not a silly stream. It's actually so serious. I want to be able to read my introduction just in case any of Watchtower's lawyers happen to be watching. Because if you know anything about cults, it's that they hate criticism. Vocal critics within the group will be excommunicated and labeled by the leadership as evil betrayers to active members. Scientology is famous for weaponizing the legal system against its most vocal ex-members in attempts to shut them up, or when it comes to anonymous whistleblowers, unmask them. In Watchtower, the entity behind Jehovah's Witnesses is no different. In 2019, for example, they sued a random Redditor called Darkspilver. Darkspilver posted a picture of one of Jehovah's Witnesses' widely distributed publications. It was just literally the picture of a back of the Watchtower, and he posted it on Reddit. And that was it. Yes, it really was that stupid. Watchtower filed a false copyright claim and wasted hundreds of thousands of donated dollars to unmask a Redditor who didn't even leak internal information. Watchtower lost the case. Around the same time Watchtower was suing Darksilver, they also sued a guy who made cute stop-motion Lego videos poking fun at Jehovah's Witnesses on YouTube because in one of them he showed a clip of one of their real videos. It was also stupid and based on false copyright claims. They lost. And what little press these cases generated made them look really bad and petty and small, and so probably that's why they haven't done this in a few years. And it seems that they have regathered and are finding a new approach to attempt to silence their critics. This time, in January of 2024, according to publicly available court documents, Watchtower sued not just some random internet ex-member, but the most respected Watchtower whistleblower, Mark O'Donnell. I am looking at courtlistener.com. I will post the links to this stuff in the description later as well, so you can follow along, but you can pretty much find this stuff on Google. If you don't know, Mark O'Donnell was a lifelong Jehovah's Witness who, like many, left the group due to finding out about its widespread cover-up of child sexual abuse. And since leaving, he's become an independent journalist dedicated to covering CSA within the religion. He has assisted with countless investigations as an expert witness, has appeared in multiple documentaries, and runs a website dedicated to exposing the group's CSA scandals. In my opinion, Mark O'Donnell has caused the most material damage to Jehovah's Witnesses since the passing of former governing body member Ray Franz, and he exposed the group's internal practices back in the 80s and throughout the early 2000s. And I mean material damage in terms of money and reputation from lawsuits. When prosecutors or journalists investigate Watchtower, Mark O'Donnell is generally there to fill them in on all of the legal shenanigans the group is likely to use, the ways Watchtower's legal team is likely to lie, the way their internal hierarchy works, etc. So Watchtower is suing him. Now, I said Watchtower, but the case itself is pretty novel as far as I can tell. I am not a lawyer, as I'm sure I will reiterate many times throughout this stream, but the case, as I see it, is almost structured like a class action suit where multiple individual congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses in Pennsylvania are jointly suing Mark for allegedly wiretapping. And by wiretapping, Watchtower means Mark logged into a Microsoft Teams meeting one time, and Watchtower didn't realize it until Mark later spoke in vague terms about it in YouTube one time. We've got a lot to get into today. Hey everybody, that was the end of my script. I ran out of script. Hope everybody's good and can still hear me. We're going to get into basically what the publicly available information is. As I said, am not a lawyer. And as we're recording this, Mark has not given like a public statement. I did just kind of reach out to Mark and confirm that he was okay with me talking about this stuff on a stream. You know, obviously he couldn't really give me any information that's not already available, but I believe he is working on some kind of response with his lawyers, right? I would assume that anything he says publicly now is going to be under intense scrutiny. So I haven't really heard much. But I wanted to weigh in on this because it's a pretty big deal. I've really never seen anything like this. So this is called Burnholm Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses v. O'Donnell. And you can see this was filed January 22nd, 2024, literally on my birthday, and they didn't even include me. The last update was December 10th, as we will see, and the cause is wiretapping. Okay, so the tricky thing about this, right? If you've never been on a website like this before, like Court Listener, not all of this stuff is publicly available if it's filed under seal. So Watchtower filed everything under seal. We can't click on any of this stuff. Even if you click buy on Pacer, you can't actually buy this. As far as I know, I think it would just give you a subscription to whatever this service is. So the first publicly available document is by Mark O'Donnell and his defense. And in fact, everything that you're able to see is only Mark's side of the story so far, save for one thing, which we'll be able to look at. So right there, you're kind of seeing the way Watchtower operates. They don't just want to like do this stuff. They want to do it entirely secretly. Okay, so it's a civil suit. Good question from Jennifer M. And we're hearing it is a civil suit. Again, not being a lawyer, I don't totally know what the difference is, as other than Mark would not face prison time for a civil suit. I guess he would just face monetary sanctions. Let's get into why this is weird, first of all. So if we go through this, so it's filed by the Horsam Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Worcester Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, the East Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, Mount Pleasant Congregation, Spanish Congregation, Coventry Congregation, et al., right? And including the Burnholm Congregation. So there's a lot of individual congregations, and the way witnesses are set up is a little weird. Like, different congregations can meet in the same building. So, I don't know if these are, like, how many of these are located in different kingdom halls. Not that that would technically matter. But if we look at the first publicly available thing here, just so you can see I'm not making this up and there are actual documents. So Mark demanded a trial by jury. From what I understand, that usually means that you're confident in your case because you feel like you can make a case to a jury of your peers and they will take your side, right? Here is basically what Watchtower is alleging. They want all this stuff to be under seal and to remain under seal, right? So they don't want any of the stuff that they're filing to be made public because they know that, like, we could make fun of it or talk about it on streams like this. They generally know that it makes them look bad. And I think that that is a disparity that's important to note, that, like, the ex-Jehovah's Witness who is trying to expose corruption within the group is perfectly happy having all of this out in the open, and it is the secretive religion who's currently under grand jury investigation for child sexual abuse in the state of Pennsylvania, and where multiple arrests have already been made. They want to be secretive for some reason. Plaintiff's brief in opposition to defendant O'Donnell's motion for unsealing of the docket for entry of a limited protective order. The summary of how all that played out, by the way, like, both parties went back and forth about, like, how much of it could be made public, and they were able to come to an agreement on some kind of protective order that were, like, some of this stuff will be redacted, personal information of individual Jehovah's Witnesses in the congregation involved, but other stuff will not. So we should be able to follow this going forward while seeing Watchtower's perspective of it. So plaintiffs Burnholm Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses et al., which we're doing because it's multiple congregations, respectfully requests that this court deny defendant Mark O'Donnell's motion to unseal the docket. The only thing more secret than a grand jury investigation is a wiretapped, privileged conversation about that investigation between subjects of the investigation and their attorneys. Since this entire lawsuit arises from an ongoing Pennsylvania grand jury investigation, and no part falls outside of that setting, this court should treat this case like a grand jury case and continue to seal the entire docket / all documents, at least until the investigation is concluded. The fact that this grand jury investigation is happening is not private. Like, it's in the news in Pennsylvania. Like, you can watch clips online from their local news affiliates covering various arrests. I think there was just one in December, actually. We can look at that later. But yeah, basically, it's not private. And so one thing that's challenging when we're talking about this is like they're not clear, at least in the information that we have available, in what exactly Mark did that was illegal. The interview in question that they're alleging he leaked information on is no longer available. It was on JT and Lady C's channel, JW Critical Thinker. They're a very respectable platform, and Mark is a very respectable guest. And I mean, I've talked to Mark once or twice on the channel, and he's generally quite careful in what he says. So I'm curious to see what it is that they think he crossed the line on. We get a little bit of it in this document, but we still don't know like what their initial thing was. I only mention that because from what I have seen, a lot of times Watchtower will kind of change their story as their cases drag on. And so I'm kind of curious to see if what they say here would line up with whatever their initial filing was, but that's neither here nor there. Also, please continue to sound off in chat. I will make sure to get to your comments after we get through a little bit more of the substance of what's happening here. In this document, Watchtower is saying, we don't want any of this stuff to be made public. Mark does want this stuff to be made public. You should take our side. Let's just read the rest of this. And then there's some individual bullet points that I find interesting. In the alternative, this court should not attempt to decide contested issues about what parts of the docket records are safe to unseal until the conclusion of discovery. As explained herein, the determination of what constitutes a matter occurring before the grand jury is notoriously difficult to pin down under both federal and Pennsylvania law. Given the privacy interests at stake and the permanent effect that the decision to unseal any information will have on the congregations and their elders, attempting to draw such lines at this early juncture in the litigation by way of redaction/protective order would be a risky endeavor. For example, Mr. O'Donnell disputes the origin of some of the information the congregations allege came from the intercepted conversation between the congregations and their attorneys, claiming it originated elsewhere. So let me zoom out and provide some more context. We'll get to what their specific allegations are. But okay, there was a Microsoft team meeting. From what I gather, again, I don't know for sure, take this with a grain of salt. From what I gather and what we'll see later in this particular file, it kind of sounds like a PMO, physically in, mentally out member of one of these congregations sent a link to this Teams meeting to Mark, and he listened into it. He listened into the meeting. And Watchtower didn't know about it at the time, right? And then he gives this interview with JT and Lady C. And maybe he mentions that he listened into this attorney-client meeting. I don't know because we can't watch it. And I might have watched it at the time, but I honestly don't remember. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Watchtower is saying Mark listened in on this attorney-client meeting that happened over Microsoft Teams, and he wasn't supposed to listen to that or repeat confidential information retained in this call. But the issue, in my opinion, is that what information are they alleging was secret that nobody else knew about? Because a lot of this stuff is public knowledge. There are arrests being made fairly regularly in this case because the Attorney General in Pennsylvania is uncovering undocumented abuse, abuse that happened within Jehovah's Witnesses that they never reported to the police. So that's what they're doing, right? And the only people whose names would be in jeopardy, I would think, would be the victims of child sexual abuse. But we know that Watchtower doesn't care about that, which is why they're fighting the investigation tooth and nail and trying to silence anybody reporting on it. So I don't know. It just doesn't really make any sense to me, because what would he have said that constituted a breach of confidentiality in this law proceeding? It seems to me that they're just a little annoyed that they didn't realize it, because I don't think that's wiretapping. First of all, the way they describe this and try to justify it later is funny. But like, if one of the parties there sent him an invitation, then he was invited to attend. And then it's just the Watchtower didn't realize it. And maybe they felt a little embarrassed afterward. We have no idea. Those forms of communication are not secure. If anything was said that needed to be under lock and key, maybe don't use Teams or Zoom. I know. I mean, like, this is a little bit of a problem with the case. And given Mark's role as a journalist, and without being able to see this YouTube video, like, that's a problem. Presumably, the video will have to be submitted to evidence, which ironically may be the only way that we're able to see it in the future. Anyway, I want to skip past this because I think we can jump to what they're referring to. Yeah, and shout out to this post on the subreddit, because I believe the document I'm trying to find was actually posted just by this random user. I think this is the one that we want. Yeah, credit where credit is due to a person who posted a link to a publicly available document, just for the record, in Sorsalady. I probably didn't say that right, but you're a real one, and you're helping us out, so thank you for that. Okay, so this gives us like a pretty clear bullet point version of what Watchtower is alleging here. So the first ones that come to mind, and maybe we can go through some other ones, I think starts at like 104. Now, just for people who don't normally watch my show, it is normally a bit sillier, and we have sound drops. And obviously, I'm not going to play the full thing, but I do need to take a sip of water.
The water of life.
So these are their allegations for wiretapping, I think. Oh, hey, look. Okay, so this is the YouTube video. Wait, whoa, there's a link to it. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not available anymore, as I kind of assumed would be the case. On or about February 19th, 2023? Whoa, okay, so this is going back a ways. And wait, so they didn't file until January 2024? That's sus. So this is what they're alleging happened in the YouTube video, but lest we forget, the first filing was January 22nd, 2024. And they're saying that this YouTube interview that constitutes the breach of confidentiality happened in February 19th, 2023. So not exactly, I don't know, where's the industriousness that I always heard about as a Jehovah's Witness? That's asleep at the wheel, if you ask me. On or about February 19th, 2023, O'Donnell participated in an interview that was recorded and posted on YouTube. YouTube automatically generates a transcript of the video, the text of which was copied and pasted into a document. See Exhibit A. My first concern with this is that YouTube's automatically generated transcripts are not always accurate, so I don't know. The video is entitled Jehovah's Witnesses Legal Woes, Washington State. During the interview, and they give the timestamps, O'Donnell reveals detailed information about the state grand jury investigation, much of which could only have come from the meeting. And we have no way of knowing whether this is true because we can't see the video. We can't see what they're alleging. So isn't that convenient? I would only say that, yeah, I mean, until we know what they're even saying, we can't even know if they're right. Upon information and belief, O'Donnell was able to disclose such detailed and specific information because he recorded the February 16 Teams meeting without the unanimous consent of the 11 Montgomery County Congregation's body of elders. How do we know that? How do they know that he recorded it? O'Donnell accessed not only the audio portion of the meeting, but also the video portion. O'Donnell's YouTube interview describing the February 16th Teams meeting was also posted to the website Reddit and was endorsed by John Redwood, which is his pseudonym on Reddit. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how would they even know that he recorded it? And is the allegation that he recorded it, or that he talked about what he heard at the meeting during YouTube interview? Logged into the meeting approximately 30 minutes before the designated start time and stayed in the meeting for its duration, approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes in total. And so they're insinuating this is his phone number. Why wouldn't his personal phone number be redacted, by the way? Upon further information and belief, O'Donnell logged into the confidential Teams meeting 30 minutes before the meeting start time in order to obscure his presence at the meeting. Why is that more obscure? Isn't it more suspicious if somebody is logged in early and you can see their phone number? This is a big issue that I have with this premise, is that the fact that he called in early, and the host of the meeting would be able to see that he was there, and would be able to see that there was a person from that area code calling in. So what is the problem here? You know what I'm saying? Upon further information, he logged into the Teams meeting using his phone number rather than his name to conceal his identity during the meeting. I don't know if that is true, but so basically he's saying they're saying that he called and listened. Now they have to prove that there was harm done. I think this is also a little thin because surely the harm done is because there is a grand jury investigation happening and that's like been on the news and the attorney general has done multiple press conferences about it. Like I think that's probably the damage, and the damage is because Watchtower was protecting pedophiles. You know, they were not protecting them because they love them so much, but because they're deeply embarrassed about the fact that these things happen in their religion, and they don't want it to get out there. They like to handle everything internally, even though they have nominal rules about how elders, that people like have the right to call the police. The internal elders manual still advises elders to not call the police, to first call the Watchtower legal department, and the legal department will then direct the elders on what to do. And the legal department, by the way, speaking of being sussy and hiding your identity, when elders call the legal department, they are not given names. They are given like little codes of somebody. And usually they're talking to a paralegal. They're not given the name of that paralegal, just a code to protect the identity of the person in the legal department. And then they just are given orders on whether or not it's a mandatory reporting state. And sometimes even when it is, they don't report. I mean, that's why Watchtower's in trouble, is because there are times when they have run afoul of the mandatory reporting laws, right? They're grasping for legal action. Yeah. Sorry, let's get to the harm that they're causing. As a result of O'Donnell's actions, each plaintiff congregation suffered a palpable injury in fact in its own right, consisting of the invasion of its legally protected interest in the privacy of its privileged communications, intrusion upon seclusion, and disclosure of those unlawfully intercepted communications causing reputational harm. O'Donnell's actions also adversely affect each plaintiff congregation's ability to redacted. I don't know what this means, right? They're basically saying that the fact that he listened in at all was the damage. That it's damaging that somebody who wasn't supposed to be there was there. I think that's what they're saying. These injuries are concrete because they have a close relationship to an intangible harm that is actionable under Title III, blah, blah, blah. O'Donnell's actions in ways that are difficult to measure at this time. It impairs each plaintiff congregation's ability to pursue its mission by forcing it to divert time, effort, and or resources that could be better used elsewhere to counteract O'Donnell's conduct in the future. Yeah, what does that mean? Sorry, I want to skip ahead to how they justify this being wiretapping because I think it's kind of funny. So, 100. O'Donnell intercepted the wire or electronic communications made during the team's meeting on February 16th, 2023, defining intercept to mean the oral or other acquisition of the contents of any wire, electronic. Sorry, I get a little choked up. Or oral communication through any use of electronic, mechanical, other device, blah, blah, blah. O'Donnell used an electronic, mechanical, or other device to intercept the wire or electronic communications made during the team's meeting. O'Donnell did not simply dial into the meeting using his telephone, but rather used his smartphone as a computer by accessing the video portion of the meeting, describing the attorneys as men with beards. Maybe that's quoting something Watchtower said. Therefore, the telephone... Maybe that's like referencing something Mark said in this interview, maybe. Therefore, the telephone exception does not apply. Doesn't it seem like they're trying to imply that when you hit the video button on a Zoom call that your phone turns into a computer? Like, I don't know about that. That seems a little spurious to me. Don't we all use our phones as computers? Like, this seems like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this particular portion. By the way, great point here. So Jenny Bloom says, logging into an unsecure Teams meeting equals wiretapping. Masturbation equals self-abuse. Watchtower logic. So yes, that is how they define masturbation, as self-abuse. So we're grading them on a curve Within Jehovah's Witnesses, not all words mean what they mean to everyone else. Like, worldly can be a compliment outside of a high control, high demand religion. I already said cult earlier, so I don't know why I'm trying to be cagey about it now. O'Donnell's interception of the wire, or electronic communications made during the team's meeting, occurred in Pennsylvania because the communications were captured and rerouted from Pennsylvania to Maryland, where O'Donnell resides. This is just how communication works. I'm also starting because I'm trying not to curse. This is just how it works. Like, you watching this, I'm in Ohio, okay? You're not intercepting this from Australia or New Jersey or wherever you're watching. The two places where most of my audience is from, Australia and New Jersey. This really feels trumped up. As a non-lawyer who doesn't know what he's talking about and isn't giving you legal advice, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I don't have a personal lawyer. O'Donnell disclosed and or used the wire or electronic communications made during the team's meeting by revealing them during his YouTube interview and endorsing them on a blog in a matter not permitted by the act. Now, but this is the whole problem and why I probably don't have that much more to say about it. Although I think we should look at one of Mark's defense of this stuff that's publicly available, because without being able to see this interview, we really don't know what they're talking about. So far, the only thing that seems specific that might be a part of this video is that the lawyers had beards, which Mark probably mentioned offhandedly as a joke because at the time, witnesses were not allowed to have beards. Oh boy, the conspiracy brain is activated, but it simply must be shut down at this moment. We don't know what they're alleging was a breach of conduct. Because if all he said was, there's a grand jury investigation happening in Pennsylvania, and I was able to listen in on one of these meetings, that isn't anything, right? That's just him saying that there is a grand jury investigation and that he listened into it. But if he actually did name somebody in this meeting, like if he used their name in this interview and said, oh, and one of the suspects is Freddie so-and-so from the Spice congregation, I don't know, like that would probably be some kind of breach of confidentiality. So we literally just don't know. And I do want to be clear about that. It is entirely possible that Mark ran afoul of some kind of confidential information. It's possible, but given the accuser, I don't think we should just take their word for it. They're known for lying in court and for trumping up charges and for trying to silence their critics. And Mark is probably their most effective critic when it's come to holding the group to account financially and legally. So it's kind of unclear to me how much of this we can trust from their side of it. But let's go to, I want to go back to just the normal court lister sites. But yeah, we legit don't know. And to be clear, like Mark has not made any public statements at this time. But we can see all of this stuff. We can see all of this stuff that's publicly available. This is one of his motions to unseal the docket. This gives us some background in terms of what Mark's side of the story is. So this is factual background posted by his lawyer. Okay, so factual background. Defendant Mark O'Donnell is an independent journalist who was raised and baptized in the Jehovah's Witness Church. Mr. O'Donnell has reported widely on the systemic cover-up of child sexual abuse within Jehovah's Witness congregations and their associated corporations, including, but not limited to, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, and the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're a witness peeping in here, or you just don't know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses or how they operate legally, this is one of the really important things about them, is that they're broken up into all these different legal entities that, I don't entirely understand the mechanics of which part of it does which, but if you're a Jehovah's Witness or an ex-witness, you remember how at the conventions and assemblies, they'd be like, if you want to make a donation via check or money order, make it a payable to, and then they would say something like this. They would say one of these companies or they would say, make it out to Watchtower, 1 word, or Watchtower, 2 words. It's because they've got all of these legal entities that they're funneling money into. We've recently covered on the channel their real estate assets, which they allegedly have tens of billions of dollars just in assets alone. So one thing that Watchtower will do in court to lie is they will say, for example, this happened with Garrett Loesch. Garrett Loesch is on record as saying, like, I am not a part of Watchtower, and Watchtower has no control over me, or something like that. Like, I don't answer to Watchtower. And he said that because, he's saying, I don't answer to Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, because illegally I'm a member of the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, they're able to be sneaky and get around accepting responsibility for certain things because of that. And the people who are at the most risk legally are elders. Like, all of this stuff is put onto them. The organization is set up in such a way that elders are far more likely to take the fall for something than the higher ups in the organization, like most corporations are, right? So anyway, since 2019, Mr. O'Donnell has consulted with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office with respect to a statewide investigative grand jury, which is investigating allegations of sexual abuse in the Jehovah's Witness congregation throughout Pennsylvania. Mr. O'Donnell has testified before that grand jury twice. Okay, so that's pretty important right off the bat, because he's been doing this since 2019, which means Mark has had knowledge of and has even testified in this grand jury long before this Teams meeting where they're accusing him of knowing stuff he wouldn't have otherwise known. As I understand it, that appears to be a little bit of a problem with their story. Plaintiff's complaint alleges that in February 2023, Mr. O'Donnell attended an online Microsoft Teams meeting between attorneys and congregation leaders from the plaintiff Jehovah's Witness congregations. As Mr. O'Donnell more fully explains in his answer, he attended the meeting by invitation from one of the attendees. Plaintiffs allege that the attorneys provided legal advice to the congregation leaders. Plaintiffs allege that Mr. O'Donnell then disclosed some of this information during an interview on YouTube. The existence of the grand jury at issue in this case has been publicly and prominently reported on for at least 4 years. Over the past year and a half, the Pennsylvania Attorney General has arrested at least 16 current or former members of Pennsylvania Jehovah's Witness congregations for the sexual abuse of minors. On October 7, 2023, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported charges brought by the Attorney General against 4 Jehovah's Witnesses for the sexual abuse of 19 children, noting that the charges stem from a grand jury investigation that started after a 2018 Inquirer investigation examined how witness leaders punished survivors after they reported abuse or sought help from police. I want to pause there for a second, because this is so important when it comes to the disparity between what Watchtower, the harm that Watchtower is alleging, versus the harm that Mark is reporting on and has also personally experienced. Like, let's be real. Anybody who has left Jehovah's Witnesses has experienced abuse, because shunning is emotional abuse. It is. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses were just defunded in Norway, because the mandatory systemic shunning of people who are locked into a contract, often because of something they committed to when they were children, is, in Norway at least, illegal. And there are other, European countries who might be moving in that direction. So Mark has experienced shunning, like a lot of us in this live feed right now. And so, like, this is a mega corporation with tens of billions of dollars, and clearly no shortage of money to throw around frivolous legal charges, coming after somebody who has experienced abuses at the hand of the church and has dedicated his life to uncovering and exposing and holding to account Watchtower for the abuses that they commit to children. And like, I don't know Mark very well, but we've had a few conversations, one of which is on the channel, which you can go back and watch. As I understand it, Mark funds all of his own stuff. He doesn't have a Patreon. He just has a business. Like, he has a day job, a business that he runs, and he uses that money to travel all over the world and report on this stuff. So the disparity in what the harm that Watchtower is claiming that they were caused by having some minor detail of a Microsoft Teams meeting said during an interview, and 16 pedophiles who were kept from the law because Jehovah's Witness leadership covered it up. Like, it's really gross. It's really, really gross. Without saying too much, anybody who like finds themselves on Watchtower's side here has lost their goddamn mind. This is just pure Scientology tactics. It's using a really weird and novel strategy to silence their most prominent critic. It's disgusting. Like, this is completely ridiculous. And think about this. Like, this is in addition to however many untold millions of dollars Watchtower is spending defending themselves in Pennsylvania. Like, they're spending so much money in Pennsylvania to try and continue to cover up child sexual abuse. But that's not too much of their money because they still have some more money to do this, to do whatever this crap is. Right. Christina said instead of paying out like reciprocity or what is it, reparations to the victims, they could pay reparations. They could pay damages to the victims. They could say they're sorry. They've literally never done that. They won't even say they're sorry. It's really it's insane. And they're one of the only churches that is like that. And every time there's some big investigation, like ICSA in England and Wales, and in the Australian Royal Commission, and recently in New Zealand, Watchtower is consistently the one holdout where they refuse to even consider paying the victims or issuing a formal apology. Even that they will not do. So these guys are absolute ghouls. The legal department and higher ups of Jehovah's Witnesses are some of the most morally bankrupt people on the face of the planet. And also, they're fully indoctrinated into a cult and think that they're carrying out the Lord's business because they've been appointed by Jesus Christ. They're spirit-appointed men. Like, these are not well people. In February 2023, the Attorney General brought charges against 5 additional Jehovah's Witnesses accused of sexual abuse of children. As part of an ongoing, did I just read this? As part of an ongoing grand jury investigation of child sex abuse within the witness organization. Again, in July 2023, the Attorney General announced charges against 5 more Jehovah's Witnesses for raping and exploiting children as part of a Pennsylvania grand jury investigation into the organization's handling of sexual abuse cases. Plaintiffs acknowledge the publicity of these proceedings in their complaint. Quote, so they quote from Watchtower's complaint, "This investigation has attracted some notoriety." I think we might have read that earlier, but basically what the defense is saying, like what Mark's defense is saying, is like this stuff is publicly available, and Watchtower even acknowledges that it has attracted notoriety in their initial complaint. So they can't really say that he's brought some like damage to the group of making something public that was already public. Let's zoom out, I think, for a second. Why was this happening? Well, yeah, I mean, we don't really know. It'd be interesting to watch that interview that Mark apparently did. Maybe we learn more about it. As I think people have noted in chat, like this is something that big corporations can do. Like it's financial warfare. They just Jenny said that. So it just drowns the opposition in debt. In one of the documents I read, they're asking for like a certain amount of money a day for every day that the YouTube video had been up. And because it took them like a year to file complaints, it was something like, I can't remember if it was like over $30,000 or $300,000. I don't remember, but it's at least that, in addition to whatever legal fees. And I saw somebody early on ask like if Mark has some kind of fund for his legal fees. Not as far as I know. Okay, so this is Subcom Freak. Section 5725 is what they're suing over. Again, if it was a meeting to discuss legal business, you broke the law. You don't know that. You're just a random person in the comments section. Sorry, Subcom Freak 1. Like, none of us know. None of us have all the information. So you can't possibly say one way or the other if you broke the law. Like, I don't understand how people are just like automatically saying like, oh yeah, Mark fucked up here. Like, we don't know that actually. We don't have all the information. And I think there's also, there's a question here. Like, Mark is a whistleblower, right? And he is exposing child sexual abuse within a cult that, in some cases, is not otherwise known, right? So there is also a question of legal versus moral. This is something that whistleblowers run into all the time. Yeah, see, there you go. Like, if someone gave him the link, maybe consent would be assumed. His side says that someone did send him a link. That's what his lawyers are saying. So, yeah, we just don't know. Somebody at the meeting. Oh, okay. You know what? I'm glad we brought up the fact that somebody sent him this link, because I think that this is an important part of the equation that's going under-examined by me, because I haven't talked about it yet. They're going after Mark, but as I talked about at the outset of this stream, their history in what they have historically done is try to unmask PMOs within the religion. And even when they don't do it legally, they'll just do it. Like, everybody who I've ever talked to on this channel, all the interviews I've done, says that as soon as they posted a video on YouTube, even though they had faded and hadn't told anybody, it got found the next day, right? Like that. That happened to me as well. You know, it seems like Watchtower is kind of trying to monitor YouTube to try and see what PMOs they can disfellowship. This happened to Ron Pomo, one of our good activists in the community, who's always blowing the whistle. He was Ron Pimo for a while. He was physically and mentally out, but Watchtower made it their business to hunt down and find out who he is, because he was leaking stuff from their public information department. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't even know that Watchtower is alleging that he wiretapped in the traditional sense of the word. It's almost like in their legalese that they're using, it's almost like they're acknowledging that all he did was click a link to join a thing, but he also turned on the video portion, and that means that his phone turned into a computer. I don't know. Kind of weird. This is my wife. If Watchtower doesn't want uninvited guests to their meetings, maybe they shouldn't be so haphazard with their Zoom team meeting links. Oh, so I don't think I ever finished my thought. If a PMO sent Mark this link, part of Watchtower's goal might be just to unmask who this PMO is, because that's a big problem for them, because that's somebody in the congregations who are under grand jury investigation. So maybe they're trying to kill two birds with one stone, and not just silence, get one over their key whistleblower guy who's always making problems for them in the news. Maybe they're also trying to unmask this person who sent that link. But yeah, we're kind of limited in what we know right now, but it certainly seems to me that they're doing a slap suit. I don't remember what the actual definition of that is, but it's just a way that corporations try and shut up criticism by suing them, because it's easier to shut up than to pay a bunch of money. So, yeah, you'd think a $1 billion religion with an obsession with secrecy would have kept the link a bit more secret. Yeah, and then it took them a year to do anything about this. So why is that? Did they intentionally wait so that they could craft something where they charge him for every single day that the video is out, and therefore rack up potential fines that he would have to pay? I don't know. Again, I'm not alleging anything. I'm speculating in my capacity as an entertainer who plays a character on a show that's really fake and not even real.